Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Markers and Monsters. As always, I'm your host, Colin, and happy Halloween 2025. Let's get started looking at some classic Halloween decor. I'm going to use a limited color palette here, so I'm keeping it to 4 colors, and spoiler alert, I added in a 5th because I screwed up and didn't math it out right, but that's all right. I don't know. Growing up, it seemed like these kind of beastly corporation cutouts were everywhere. They were in school, they were at like businesses, you go to the mall, they'd be hanging on the walls, stuff like that. And there's something about it that just screams, I don't know, Halloween to me. Even more so than, say, like a horror movie does or something. Like a horror movie, great, love them to death. But that says horror, not Halloween specifically. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody but me. Maybe I'm just rambling here. I don't know. Regardless, the Beastly Corporation was started in 1900 here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, baby. That's right. But it wasn't until like the late 20s that they teamed up with another paper company, started making these like cutout or die-cut decorations for various holidays. Halloween was, in fact, the first ones they did before they went on to do like Valentine's Day and Christmas, stuff like that. And I think these kind of Halloween iconography, if that makes sense, images are just so timeless and classic. I felt that it would be a fun way to celebrate a little bit. As you can see, I'm putting in here in my kind of layout, some classic jack-o'-lanterns, some smiling, some looking scared, a black cat that's going meow or whatever, a bat, an owl, and tombstone. I threw a ghost in there at the end, that spooky tree. Boy, these are just so cool. I'm throwing in a witch right now too, because, you know, witches, Halloween. I don't know. It's just, yeah. Something about this stuff just speaks to my very soul in a way that a lot of other things don't quite. I don't know. I'm keeping a relatively simple layout that I can just focus in on these, for lack of a better term, we'll call them characters or we'll call them icons. But, yep. And with a lot of small details here, I'm going to go ahead in and start inking everything first before I even color. One trick to making something look as if it's like an old piece of print media or coloring book is to kind of keep your colors all the same. When things like this were printed, they didn't have the ability to print like various shades of colors or whatever. Or they did, but it was a lot cheaper and a lot more efficient to, if something's orange, like a pumpkin or the sky, it's the same exact shade, the same exact ink or whatever. And so we're keeping that limited color palette like I talked about before. But everything needs to be inked in first, so let's go ahead and get that rolling in here. I'm using a combination of brush pens and multi-liners just to make sure that everything kind of gels well and right. Kind of putting in that grass pretty thick there too. I enjoy using a brush a lot. I enjoy all kinds of inking, but using a brush, especially with something like this with real thick lines, gives a lot of freedom to just play in a way that very precise multi-liners sometimes don't allow you to do. You can be a little messy, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but it makes sense to me. Yeah. So let's talk about Halloween for a minute. What a holiday. I mean, man, 'tis the reason for the season, you know. I guess it's kind of odd. I keep the spooky vibes in me all year round, watching horror movies, thinking about, I don't know, all this spooky stuff, haunted houses and rattling chains and creaking doors and stuff like that. So it's kind of fun when the rest of the world seems to also enjoy that, at least temporarily, right? It almost feels like, you know, hey, everybody else is being my authentic true self. It's kind of fun. The older I get too, not to yuck anybody's yum, but like I'm not digging something like those Terrifier movies, which are just incredibly gory. Hey, if that's your jam, more power to you, man. You rock it. But for me, the older I get, the more I want to see stuff like this. I want to see Vincent Price, and I want to see a spooky house with, like I said, creaking doors and howling wind. And I don't need a ton of like blood and guts. And it's not even the blood and guts, honestly. You know what it is for me? It's just the pure nastiness. You know, just, I don't know. I want to have fun. And like I said, that's just me. That's my jam and my vibe. Even though I still love all kinds of horror slashers and stuff like that, I don't know. I just enjoy something a little more charming. And yeah, that's why I'm drawing these cutouts in here today. Looks like it's coming along. I decided not to put another tombstone there in the back central area because I needed room to put in a ghost. I wanted to cram as many cool Halloween icons as I could. Would have loved to have gotten in a haunted house in the background there too. I think that would have looked great. During this drawing, there was a lot of like decisions about like, oh, what do I do? What do I add in? How do I do this? And I had to go with a very light touch on a lot of these things. Especially with the erasing. There's a nice magic of editing moment there, but I let this thing sit and dry for a good like 3 hours. I find that if I get in and erase too quickly, it smears. And spoiler alert, right between the cat's legs there, it's going to have a nice little smear. I try to do as best as I can to get it off. But, you know, you do what you can, and I don't know, you just make up. Done is better than perfect, I guess. Let's go in with the moon. I'm sticking with yellow here. That doesn't quite catch the vibrancy on camera, I am afraid. I went for a real bright yellow. Again, a lot of these old print colors were very, very bright so that they showed up. The dyes were incredibly, I don't know, potent is the right word? I don't think that's the right word, but I'm going to use that word. Incredibly potent, powerful. So I just feel that's a good way to start. Love an orange sky. Nothing says Halloween like a nice pumpkin orange. So we're going to just start filling in these areas here. With the alcohol markers like these Copics, I tend to go over, you know, if I need a large block of color, I tend to go over them multiple times just to make sure there's no marker lines. I do as good a job as I can. Basically, you got to work relatively quickly, I've found, just to make sure that things do not... if they sit and dry, you're going to get lines, and I don't want that. So you got to work pretty quickly. I know in the time lapse here, it looks like I'm going very fast, but I assure you this was a time, laborious process, I guess. Going back in with, again, that same exact yellow that we used before. The Dick Tracy movie in the 90s, if anybody remembers that, they got this down pat, that comic book styling. If anything was red, it was the same shade of red, whether it was somebody's overcoat or the pipes or a car, it's always the exact same kind of red. Now, I think that gives that classic comic book look more than, you know, Ben-Day dots or anything else, really. Same with the green here. The green grass is the same green as the witch's flesh here. What a classic green Halloween witch skin. Love that very much. Going in with just a couple shades of this like white, and then I'm going to learn that I screwed up royally and I need a fifth color. So I'm bringing in this red. I took a look at some of the old, Beistle, sorry if I keep mispronouncing that, cutouts, and they did use that red on occasion. There wasn't a lot of like blues and purples that I could find. I didn't want to make a green tree or anything like that. I didn't think that would work out super good. While the red is a little similar to the orange, especially here in the video, I think in person it stands out well enough on its own. So I'm ultimately happy with how it looked. A little bit of green in there for the fence, leave some white for the highlights, add in a classic RIP. Now it's time to put in this little bit of, just a little happy Halloween for y'all. I went with the apostrophe in the Halloween. I took a look at the etymology of the word. Turns out that way back when, we're talking like the 1600s or whatever, the big part of Halloween was that it was All Hallows Eve, right? That was, Halloween wasn't a word. So after a while, Hallows Eve became Hallows Even, and then they started to shorten that, Hallow-E-N. That kind of fell out of favor in the 1700s, but you know, you could still find that kind of classic styling on like old vintage greeting cards and stuff from the 1800s, even the early part of the 20th century. And I thought that would add in just that classic feel, that little apostrophe there. It's the details, you know what I mean? Well, this is coming along super nice, and we're just gotta sign it up. Let's take a look at the scan, shall we? Let's go into that. Okay, looking pretty cool. I'm digging where this is going, absolutely, and I like all these little details. This was a fun one to work on. Again, just like that kind of coloring book vibe with the thick lines and stuff. Classic, quintessential. Hey, happy Halloween from the entire Markers and Monsters staff and family, which is entirely just me. But still, hey, I hope you guys have a good one. I'd love to hear some of your Halloween memories in the comments. Leave them. Enjoy what you're doing. Have a great night. We'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.